Hey guys, welcome back to another video. I am super excited to be recording today because it's been a long time since I've sat down and actually talked to you guys. So, hi, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Caroline. I am a third, kind of going to fourth year medical student. I know time has actually flown in medical school. It's been so quick, and I have a couple of big life updates for you guys. So, first of all, I finished MCY, major clinical year, and then right after that, I took like a week or so off to visit family and friends and celebrate the holidays, and then went into step 1 studying. I studied for step 1 for around a month and a little bit, and then took it, thankfully passed, and then went into studying for step 2, and I just took step 2 like 3 days ago. So I have a few days off. I'm gonna try to take some time to relax, spend time with family. Breaks are kind of hard to come by, at least in the third year and in the third year of med school and going into step studying. I know it's like kind of a DIY schedule, but it is a pretty intense DIY schedule, if I may say so myself. So we'll find out how things go in, I think, 3 weeks. The last video that I posted was about the first few months of my clinical year. And so in today's video, I kind of want to wrap that up and give you guys my overall thoughts on how clinical year went. Last we ended off, I had just finished neurology and psychiatry. And so the rest of the year, I had ob-gyn, pediatrics, medicine, surgery, and primary care, and that kind of wraps up the 7 core rotations. So I honestly didn't film that much during MCY. I think it was a little bit difficult with the early hours and being in a patient space. You know, it's a little bit hard to vlog there. I do have some clips though, and I'm gonna narrate over them and just explain how each rotation went. So hopefully this is helpful. Let me know if you guys would like to hear tips or any like unsolicited advice with regards to each rotation or like studying for shelves or anything like that. But let's get right into it. Okay, so starting off with OB-GYN, I had this as my third rotation, my first sort of surgical rotation that was not pass fail. I had like a few weeks of surgical subspecialties that you guys can check out in my first MCY vlog, and I'll link that up here and in the description below. On the day of the orientation, this was actually the solar eclipse day. If you guys remember 2024 in April, there was like this major solar eclipse that could be seen only along like a strip of the US, but we saw like a partial eclipse. So here's some footage from that.
Whoa.
Orientation consisted of some OB-GYN simulation sessions and some lectures on labor and delivery. So reading fetal heart tracings, knowing basic pregnancy changes in the body. For OB-GYN and also for some different rotations at my school, and I think this is common among other schools as well, is that we don't necessarily stay at one hospital for all of our rotations. Some students were assigned to CHONY, which is the Children's Hospital of New York associated with Columbia, and then others went to Stamford, Connecticut, and I was one of the 4 students who went to Stamford, Connecticut.
Well. Look what the cat dragged in from Stamford. Hey, Dwight.
So my group and I lifted over to Stamford Hospital. The hospital was really nice. It was really beautiful from the outside and from the inside as well. We basically had our mini Stamford specific orientation there and then went over to our houses. This is the hospital. This is Lauren. We're gonna be housemates for the next 5 weeks. Okay, we're here.
So how many parties are we gonna host?
This is my room. I have 2 beds for some reason. Even though it was a new space, it was really nice to be with people that we knew and we were friends with. And I think all of us grew closer during that time period together, the 4 or 5 weeks at Stanford. OB is what we think of when we think of, labor and delivery, C-sections, etc., postpartum care. And then GYN is the non-labor and delivery part. So any sort of gynecologic surgery or procedure is GYN.
Good morning. Today is my first day of GYN at Stanford Hospital. I woke up at 5:45, or 5:30-ish, and now it's around 6:20. I'm heading over to the hospital, and I have to get there at 6:45. I want to make sure I know where I'm going, and hopefully I will be able to find the resident room on the first try. Today there is a 7:30 total abdominal hysterectomy, and I tried to do some reading or some watching videos about that before going in, and maybe if I have a little more time I'll do some review. And then we also have a preceptor session at 5:30 today.
For OB-GYN, I really enjoyed OB, even nights. I really enjoyed being with the laboring moms and getting to be part of their special moment and cheering them on. A lot of it is moral support. If you are on nights for OB, I would follow the nursing staff around. I found that I learned a lot from this, especially on labor and delivery. It basically showed me all of the different steps that went into taking care of a patient who was about to go into labor. And it also helped me to be able to assist in more deliveries, because that way I got to know the patients a little bit more. I got to know how they were progressing in their labor. Depending on the team and the patient, you may even get to deliver a baby. I actually did deliver half a placenta. The baby came out and then the placenta needs to be delivered. And so I think it was a resident or an attending who basically walked me through doing that. So that was pretty cool. Okay, so now I want to talk a little bit about peds. So peds, I really don't think I filmed anything during this rotation. Basically, this was 3 weeks of inpatient, 1 week of outpatient, and then 1 week of ENT built into that schedule. That's kind of just how our school does it. Inpatient was kind of like a mini medicine. So people call OB, the gyn part, a really good entry into surgery, and then peds is kind of like an entry into medicine, but just for kids. Inpatient, the patients ranged from little babies with bronchiolitis, with croup, to kids with genetic diseases and who have been in the hospital for the majority of their life. On pediatrics, inpatient specifically, and also outpatient. What's really important and a good skill that I learned was something called family-centered rounding. For a little bit of background, rounding is when in the morning your team kind of goes around to see all the patients on your list. There's a list of patients, for example, 10 to 15 patients on one service. In the adult world, or from what I've seen, and it really depends on your attending and how your team functions, but there's a couple ways to do it. There's you report on updates on the patient outside of the room, and then you go in together to see the patient, or you can go in to bedside and do the same thing, basically talk about updates while the patient is there. There are advocates for the second way of doing rounding because the patients there can add any information that we miss, can correct any information, and can, express their own feelings, which is arguably the most important part of, taking care of a patient. For peds specifically, this is not an easy job because you have the child there who is the patient, and you also have their parents, and you have to be able to present information in a way that hopefully everyone in the room is able to understand. So technical enough to convey the intricacies of what has been going on, but then also in a way that the patient and their parents can understand. Instead of making things as complicated as possible, try to make things as easy to understand as possible so that everyone in the room understands. I really enjoyed peds. For our school, it was structured really well, wherein we had didactics basically every single day. That was a really nice way of catching up with our friends while also, doing our own thing. And then all of the services were pretty close together on just a couple floors away, so we would often see each other during rounds and everything. I don't know if maybe it's the culture of CHONI or for basically the majority of pediatric residencies, but feedback is given a lot. And so right before let's say you want feedback on your oral presentation, right before you present, ask your resident, because they're probably going to be listening to you, be like, can you pay attention Would you mind like giving me feedback afterwards? And if so, would you pay attention to specifically XYZ part of my presentation? For example, my reporting of the labs, or my one-liner, or my assessment, or how I structure the plan. So that'll give them something to focus in on, and they'll be able to give you more specific feedback and advice on how to improve. So now on to medicine. Medicine is one of the biggest rotations of the year for us. It is 3 months long. The other rotations range from like 4 to 6 weeks, I would say, but medicine was 12 weeks. We did have 1 week of ED and 1 week of ophthalmology built into the schedule, so I guess it was 10 weeks. If I were to go back and choose my schedule, I would choose the same schedule. I think the first half of the year was really helpful in terms of prepping me and having me be familiar with the hospital environment. And then I started medicine in July because that was when the interns first started. So my first day was basically my intern's first day or first week of residency. So I felt like at this time, one, I maybe could be more helpful to the team, you know, trying to pick up some of the work, because starting residency is a big job, and so hopefully I could be able to be more helpful. And then two, I think I'm already kind of used to Epic, like our electronic medical record system, writing notes, seeing patients, and so obviously still a lot to learn, but I felt like it was a good timing in that aspect. For medicine, I felt like I was able to be the most hands-on with patient care that I had since the beginning of that year. One fun part of medicine that I'm just remembering now is that you switch services quite often. So, for example, I started off with 4 weeks of GI. Then I had 2 weeks of general medicine at the Allen Hospital, which is our affiliated hospital a little bit further north of our campus. I loved my rotation there. I had amazing teams. The pace at that hospital, it's a little bit smaller, it was a little bit slower. The building itself was a little bit smaller, so it was kind of easier to get from the ED to back to our room and everything and check in on our patients. After that, I had 2 weeks of step down. Step down is the unit between the level of care between the general floor and the ICU, or the intensive care unit. And so it's kind of like in between. There are patients who are a little bit sicker, who need more frequent monitoring, who go to step down. My last 2 weeks, I had cardiology. I was on the general cardiology service. Very interesting. This is where you want to learn how to really read EKGs, because when you're presenting and admitting a patient, you'll be asked to read their EKG. You should also try to be familiar with echoes. Basically, in each room, for us, there were 2 teams, so 2 attendings, 4 residents, and then me and another medical student on the separate teams. And the attending on the other side was an echo expert, and so she would teach us a lot about that. And then my attending was actually, I think she's the head of nuclear medicine, and so one day I was actually able to go down and check out nuclear medicine. I would take the opportunity, for example, if your patient on cardiology needs to go get a stent, like ask your team if you're able to go and see them if that's something that's convenient for your schedule and for your learning. Try to see as many procedures as possible and follow your patients as closely as possible. One of my other patients unfortunately had to have a chest tube in because she had a pleural effusion. I just asked my team if I could go and see the procedure. Those are the times that I remember the most, I think. The times that I remember the most are when I get something wrong, when my attending asks me something and like I don't 100% know it, and then when I'm like there in the action. I'd say residents are very open to teaching, especially like if they have the time. If they have a lot of work, then maybe ask them at a different time. But generally, like very open to teaching. For example, in the chest tube placement, I would be asking questions and try to figure things out and see how I can help, like if I could help grab materials, even though they were not my primary team. And that's just a way to be a helpful person in the hospital in general. Starting off on medicine, I know I kind of, looking back, like I really enjoyed it. I learned so much from it. But in the moment, there definitely were challenging moments. I'll play you a clip of my reaction or my reflection on my first 3 days of medicine. Let me see if I could find it. It's July 4th and we have a day off from medicine, and it's been 3 days on medicine so far, and I think it's definitely more intense than the other rotations. But yeah, first day I came back and I cried. The second day I came back and I cried a little bit less. And then the third day I came back and I maybe felt a little bit sad and stressed, but I didn't cry. So that's progress. I think overall, I am enjoying medicine. I think when I'm there, it's pretty fun and it is pretty interesting. I feel like I'm learning a lot in like such a short period of time. But then when I get back home and there's not as much stimulation around me, I kind of feel like a little bit lost, which is not a great feeling, but I think it's all part of the process, hopefully, and then we'll get better. And it's just a little bit of the uncertainty because like I don't know a lot of the things that I'm reading about, and so that makes it kind of hard. But anyway, all good, all good. All good, all good. Okay, I'm gonna run now, bye. Yeah, so that was a recording that I made 3 days into the rotation. I think it's pretty clear that I was a little bit overwhelmed, and I think it was because, you know, I said like the other rotations had been good prep, which I still agree with, although I think medicine is just a lot of information, and so it can feel quite overwhelming. And, you know, talking to my friends, I wasn't the only one who felt this way. And I think knowing that maybe this is kind of supposed to be the feeling of being on the learning curve, it was more comforting, and it made me feel like I wasn't an outlier in how I was feeling. So looking back, I'm like, oh, poor Caroline, it's gonna get better. And it did get better. It like couple weeks into the rotation, you're already like light years ahead of where you were when you started. So if you're watching this and you are also feeling this way, just know that it does get better. I will say admission notes took me so many hours at the beginning. So many hours. Like, it's really important that you understand everything about your patient and really try to understand, even if you can't kind of look things up. And so that may take a lot of time. But then if you do that, as the weeks go on, you'll accumulate so much knowledge. It's hard in the moment, but I think it's worth it. And then again, like I just took step 2. A lot of what I learned from my patients came up on step 2. So yeah. Talking about daily schedule on medicine. At the beginning, I would wake up at 5:30 a.m. I would pre-chart from home until like 6:30 a.m. And then I would go into the hospital to fully pre-round, check in on my patients, and write my note. Rounds were at 8 a.m. So I kind of gave myself a lot of time to do that at the beginning, which I think I needed because it took me quite some time to pre-chart on things and figure out like what's the most important thing to look into, like what do I need to report. This is when you're getting the hang of things. I think it's also a pretty common experience. When I got a little bit more used to the medicine service, my routine switched to pre-charting the night before, prepping my note so that the morning of I didn't feel so rushed. And I think that's a good strategy, and I would advise you, if that's something that fits into your schedule, like at night, like right before you're going to sleep, I would log into Epic or whatever EMR that you're using, and then just check if there's any updates from when you left the hospital to that night. You can like start a note, just, you know, don't sign it because you haven't finished it, obviously, but you can prepare your note for the next day. That way, when you are pre-rounding on your patient, you don't have to fully write out a new note. You already have a template that you made for yourself, and then just fill in the new information. That actually saved me a lot of stress in the morning. Overall, I would say medicine was one of my favorite rotations. I had great teams, great patients, an amazing time. There will be times, as you heard from my recording, where you feel completely overwhelmed. But I think as long as you're putting in the effort, your team will see that. If you make a mistake, don't take it personally. Just think about how that will contribute to you being the doctor that you want to be in the future. Okie dokie. So moving on to the last 2 rotations, it's surgery and primary care coming up next. So surgery, to be quite honest, coming into medical school, I was a little bit intimidated by surgery. I think for reasons that may be clear to you, I was, OR etiquette is something that I wasn't familiar with before medical school. The hours coming in at what I thought would be like 4 a.m., 4:30 a.m. and leaving at like 8 p.m., for example. That might be in residency, but that wasn't my experience in medical school. The things you hear about surgery kind of made me a little bit intimidated. However, I was very, very pleasantly surprised, and I had an amazing time on surgery, and I really enjoyed it. And it was also one of my favorite rotations of medical school. I was specifically on the breast surgery service. You have the choice at our school to rank different services. I chose breast surgery because I heard, one, you may have the most exposure to medical oncology in that service. I mean, you would have exposures to these in colorectal and hepatopancreatic biliary, but I think for breast service, a lot of breast cancer surgeries, and so you get to have a little bit of expertise by the end of the rotation. Because of the nature of the surgeries, the procedures are very similar. So mastectomies, lumpectomies, I think I did get to be a little bit more familiar with those procedures, which made me more comfortable helping to set up and everything in the OR. Because of this, near the end of the rotation, I was given the opportunity to help suture and help close. That was super fun. I really enjoyed that part. Closing the skin, helping to like suction and bovie during the surgeries. It was a good experience. It made me feel like I was really part of the surgical team. I also saw how breast surgeons form very, very close connections to their patients. I think it's the nature of the oncology aspect, as well as the nature of the very vulnerable space that is the OR and then also the clinic. You have a breast cancer patient who has their surgery done, and then they still need to be followed up for at least 5 years after. And so you have that long-term relationship with the patients, and hopefully they don't have to come see you in the future, because hopefully they will be cancer-free within or after the 5 years. So it's always funny where it's like, oh, congratulations, you don't have to see me again in the future because you've been cancer-free these 5 years, which is always good news. Also, on our surgery rotation, our rotation is from Monday through Friday. We do have some weekend shifts. And then each Friday is actually a switch day. So I was on breast as my main service, but then I was able to go on vascular for one day, and the attending let me suture a blood vessel. And I think I did an okay job, because he said something along the lines of, well, since you're not taking 3 days to do the suture, like, I'll let you do another one. I was like, oh, okay, great. Thank you so much. I was like so nervous, but it went well. I also saw thoracic surgery, help pull some chest tubes, and then ACS surgery, so gallbladder removal. And then this was a patient whose anatomy was actually like flipped. So it's called situs inversus. And so they're like, don't remember anatomy from, the laparoscopic case for this patient, because it's going to be the opposite from what we learned in the textbook. So I thought that was like a 1 in a million experience. Okay, and last but not least, primary care. I also really enjoyed this rotation. I think I was fortunate to have really good teams and really good buddies to be at each of these sites with. I was with Allie during my primary care rotation at Farrell. We each saw around 4 to 6 patients a day. And while that, I don't know if that sounds like a lot or a little bit, I'm not sure what like the perception of that is, but I think at the beginning, I took a long time to pre-chart again, kind of similar to the start of every rotation. It can be more time than, you would take at the end of the rotation, but it took me like a good couple hours to even just like pre-read on the patients. Near the end, I think I was like more comfortable and able to see those patients independently, present to my resident, and then we would go see them together. The family medicine residents here are so nice. We also had a sub-I here who recently matched. Congratulations. Hi guys, today is a primary care Monday. I am on my lunch break now, but I do need to finish up a couple of patient notes from this morning. This morning we had our video review session. So these are sessions where we video record, with consent of course, patients that we talk to. And then afterwards, I think next week, I will be reviewing this video with our learning specialist, or like education specialist, Dr. P. And then this will help me to understand what I'm doing well, what I need to improve on. Right now, for lunch, there is this cafe nearby called the Five Flies Cafe. It's right across the street. I had never been to it before coming to the clinic that I am in.
I went to it once last week with a couple of friends and it was really nice. It was a good place to do work while being outside of the clinic, but then also having easy access back to the clinic. So I'm gonna go there and finish up my notes and then also get lunch. Today I got a broccoli cheddar quiche and an iced matcha latte. And I'm gonna do some more.
I was on family medicine during the holiday season, so like Thanksgiving into almost Christmas, and there was a holiday party at Farrell. It was so nice. It was like I think we saw patients in the morning, and then the afternoon we had off to celebrate with the Farrell fam. I think that's kind of it. All in all, had a really good learning experience on MCY. Ups and downs for sure. I think that's as with anything in life, but what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And it really is, you know, who you work with and who you spend the year with. And I'm glad that I was in a group with good friends and wonderful people. Social support is very important. I would recommend, if you are struggling or if you are having a hard time, talking about it. I think everyone feels that way. I certainly felt that way at the beginning of each rotation. I felt like a little bit overwhelmed just because, you know, it's a whole new space, whole new team, etc. But it'll pass. It'll pass and you're gonna do great. And okay, so I think that's it for this video. I hope you guys found it interesting or insightful / I hope the advice was helpful. Please let me know if you do have any more questions on that. Yeah, those are basically my tips for the rotation, although I'm sure I have more. I just need to think about it. I'm so glad the weather is getting nicer and it's not as cold and the days are longer and brighter. So yeah. Oh my god. Okay, sorry. This is like gonna be a really long video, but match day was last Friday. It was 5 days ago. From what I saw, I hadn't really talked to too many people, but I think everyone matched really well. I'm really, really happy for them. They work so hard. They work so hard. I'll be basically applying later this year and then hopefully matching. I guess I'll be graduating next year. Isn't that so fast? Really good to see you guys. I missed you and I missed recording and vlogging for you guys. And hopefully I'll be able to do that a bit more in the future. So I'm gonna go ahead and edit this video now and hopefully post it soon. Okay, well, thank you for watching and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye. Oh guys, before I forget, I actually do have a lot of footage from fun times outside of the hospital during MCY. Let's see what we've got here. So to start off, I know I already talked about Five Flies Cafe in Washington Heights. I also wanted to show you guys 3 of my new favorite cafes in the same area. This one is Dua's Cafe. I came here once to study during a lunch break, and I think I got a chicken panini from there. This one is Semicolon. It's a Korean style bakery, and they have really pretty sandwiches and good drinks. And then lastly, this is the Chipped Cup, a very cozy place to study, although it is often quite packed, so you might not be able to find a seat during peak hours. In the fall, my friends Lauren and Paige also hosted a Friendsgiving at their apartment. This is Paige. Just look at their beautiful apartment. Such nice decor. It's always a good time here. This here was from a Sleepy Hollow girls trip that we took between medicine and surgery. This was right around pumpkin picking season. We went for spooky vibes and lots of green space, lots of families and little kids, and just a good time. It was a really nice day trip from the city, and this is actually located right by another medical school, New York Medical College. Also during MCY, it is a little bit difficult, or at least for me, at the beginning, to find a balance between studying, working in the hospital, and working out. I think it's so important to try to keep self-care and your hobbies up and try to do those as much as possible. This was from a snowman building event near the holiday season. We kind of just heard about. I think it was hosted by Housing, and Megan and Lauren and I went to stuff our plushes. This is the final product.
Yeah, I'm taking a video because I'm like violently trying to stop it.
No, that's okay. We also did have a celebratory end of MCY brunch with our group. We were group E. Our school organizes it by like letters A through H. And so we went to this Italian restaurant near the undergrad campus. It was really good, and it was always a fun time to get together and not have to think about work. And last but not least, this was a really fun event. This was a Dave & Buster's event hosted by our school for both students in our class who had just finished MCY and students who were just going into MCY, so starting their clinical year. The vlog, let's go!
Oh! Oh!
And what better way to end the year off than a transition meeting?
For ambiance.
Hi, Kathy. Kathy, what are we up to?
We are hosting a session to provide advice and tips for the students who are beginning their clinical year soon.
Woo! Because we're almost over. We're not almost over. Our year is almost over. Hopefully we're not almost over.
We have winter break, and then we're going to start studying for our dedicated study period.
Yeah. Yes. So exciting. How do you feel about the year wrapping up?
I am a little bit sad because I think we've learned a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But also I'm ready.
Yeah.
I think everybody's really ready.
We're there. And kudos to Kathy for organizing this.
No, team effort.
None of this is like driven by the faculty or staff or anything. Like someone just said, it was made by some like M3s the year before us, and so we saw a lot of these.
Yeah, I think the lesson here is always good to pay it forward. And don't be afraid to ask for help. Alrighty, I'll see you guys later. Always a pleasure. I missed you guys, and hopefully see you soon. Mwah.